And I really believe that we're like living out a movie that we think is playing forwards, but is actually playing backwards. And all of this is tied to entangled future and past. The past and the present create the future, but the future also creates the past. And how we perceive it is totally up to us. So the main message I want to give to everybody is that you are the captain, and the captain of your fate and the master of your own soul.
You're listening to the Madelyn Moon Show, the podcast that will show you how to become masterful at making art out of love, life, and everything that comes your way. Hi, Robert. It's so good to have you on the podcast
So
today.
great to be here with you.
Yeah, this is such a treat. I mean, we've been talking about doing a podcast together for a while, and I was on your show, and that was so
awesome.
fun. So Robert Edward Grant, how do you even describe this man? He has created so many things in this world. He is an author, an entrepreneur, a polymath, which I'm super excited to chat about today. And you have such a robust, brain. Your brain is so robust, and the energy that you move through your system is one of a kind. The texture of energy that moves through your system and the lightning bolt speed at which you take in the world and then process the codes of the world is pretty incredible to be around. And I'm super excited to dive in today and to blend both of our worlds of the embodied and the relationship and the you-ness, the humanness of you, but also this beautiful world of polymath, which is just so exciting.
Well, it's an evolving thing too. And I'm on this journey, I guess. That's how I kind of see my life. I feel like I'm on this journey and I'm understanding myself. And I thought at a young age, I understood who I was. And as I've gotten older, I realized that, what Socrates said of know thyself is the hardest thing we'll ever do. Because we tend to find ourselves in a limited capacity. We don't realize that we're limiting ourselves by deciding the things that we're not very early on. And then it's I'm not that, I'm not that. And then we cast blame on other people for those things that we believe we're not, but we're actually just projecting. And then we kind of come into the latter half of our lives and we start to realize all the things that we disintegrated from ourselves are actually having to get reintegrated into ourselves with acceptance and love. And it becomes the most beautiful thing. In the process of this, you learn that you're not actually seeing the world as it is. You're seeing the world as you are. And you deny and see the things only that you want to see in yourself and in everyone else. And then it starts to come back at you so strongly. And that's the process that I'm going through right now, is to realize that the more I learn, the less I actually know.
Yeah. And I was sharing with you earlier that I've been really excited about studying this thing called the personality patterns, which shows how energy moves through people's bodies based off of trauma.
Sounds fascinating.
It's so fascinating, and it flows in a very particular direction. I like this book because it doesn't really necessarily focus on how to heal the trauma, which, so many things cover that, but more so let's just focus on the energy flow of trauma. And one of the things it talks about is that your specific flavor of trauma, the impact you had as a kid, completely shapes how you perceive the world. So that energy flow of I don't feel safe. And, for you, maybe it being one type, energy go out this way. That living in that kind of energetic state changes your perceptions of the world. So we don't only heal trauma and heal, as you're saying, the change the decisions we have made about who we are just for ourselves and our philosophy and our psychology and our mind, but also because we expand so much more in the world. We actually can perceive so much more than this teeny tiny limited viewpoint that we've created from childhood.
It's so true. And I tend to look at it based on radio stations. So you could say that your whole life has been playing on different radio stations. And you could also apply that analogy to timelines, right? So let's say that the way you experience a timeline, as I just said, it's not as you think the world is, it's actually as you are, because you're perceiving that world around you. And what determines it is the emotional state that you're in. So if your emotional state is in a high vibration, you're going to have very high vibrational experiences, even though the same things might happen to you that are happening to other people that are in low vibrational state. Their perception of what's happening is becoming a negative sort of dystopian experience. And for you, if you're in a higher vibrational state, you can look at all of this and you become like impervious to all of the negativity of it. And you start realizing, whoa, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. And so this is what happens. If you've ever experienced a moment where at one point in time you said to yourself, this is the worst thing that's happening to me right now. And then a few months later or a year later, you might actually come back and say it could be a breakup or something. You might come back and say, oh my gosh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because it led to this, this, and this.
Yeah.
You've experienced that, right?
Oh, yeah.
So your experience has just created like a Mandela effect in a way. Mandela effects are when things change in your past and it's not the same as you remembered it originally, right? So by changing and raising your frequency, you can transmute all the negativity of the things in your past when you realize that they happened for a reason and a purpose.
And you're saying the Mandela effect?
Yeah, Mandela. Mandela, like Nelson Mandela.
Right, yes.
So the reason why it's called a Mandela effect is because in the early 1980s, a lot of people remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison.
Right.
And there was like a 4-hour thing on television for him and everything. He didn't die in 1980. It's the crazy thing about it. He lived much longer than that. He died, in the 2000s. But basically, people remember watching his funeral procession and everything. And so that becomes a collective Mandela effect. Another Mandela effect would be something like the way the Flintstones is spelled, or something like if you play Monopoly, a lot of people remember the Monopoly character guy had a monocle on his eye.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually have a monocle now.
Yeah.
So if you go back and look at a Monopoly box right now, if you expect to see the monocle, it's not there.
It's it's a glitch in the Matrix, right?
It's a glitch in the Matrix, exactly.
There's a movie on this. I watched a movie on this. It was pretty fascinating.
Super fascinating. I haven't seen the movie. What's the movie? I got to see it.
I think it's called Mandela.
Really?
Mandela. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's called, or maybe it's Black something. I'll look it up after. I met the director of it, and he was, I made a movie. And I saw it, and I was like, whoa, it was really well done.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I looked up online, like, all the different things that have this, and like the Bernstein Bears.
Bernstein Bears,
like there's a different way than what we remember. There was something with the Wendy's. Anyways.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
But you could do that with your own life in a way. As an individual, the way you look back on something, and time has a polarity associated with it. So very often, if you're an optimist, you tend to look at even negative things that happened in your past as sort of through rose-colored glasses. Right. So it's like, oh, this led to this, what I'm dealing with right now. But what if you could apply that concept to every moment of now?
Okay, question. So a little bit of nuance. What if someone is already, let's say, like the archetype or the energy of the constantly forgiving human, like the rose-colored glasses, but it's not helpful because it's not sharpening her perception. She actually needs to sharpen her perception in a moment rather than just widening it. And create discernment, right? So something I've talked a bit about is that the Tantra perspective, particularly, I don't know if it would be classical or neo or maybe both, but the tantric perspective of be a yes to everything. Yeah, like it's all God, it's all love. I feel that this is super foundational and supportive to have the belief that it's all God, it's all God, it's all God, to a specific extent. And then there's a place we can enter where we don't forget about that. We don't repress that. We still hold that truth while we also go right, wrong. We also can create the decisions for ourselves that there is, in a moment like this is a huge no, because we can lose that. We can lose our center of what's meant for us and what's not meant for us when it's all so much God and it's all so much yes, that it's easy to turn any situation into a big yes and not actually create discernment and that powerful, like, fuck no, not okay. So I'm curious your thoughts on that for those who are maybe really in that shifting their perspective, but also need more of that discernment.
The way I look at it is I used to say, okay, I really like the term non-judgment, right? Because very often we don't realize that our conditioning biases, the things that we grew up with, our nature and nurture aspects, actually lead to how we perceive the world. You know, it's like the story of the story of the two little boys that are, one boy is a super optimist, they're twins, and the other boy is a super pessimist. So the parents decide, okay, we got to figure this one out. And on Christmas morning, they bring in a psychiatrist who sets up one room full of all the best toys that a 5-year-old boy could ever want. And he sets up an outhouse full of horse manure for the other little boy, for the optimist boy. So he takes the little pessimistic boy to the room with all the toys in it, swings open the door and says, "Merry Christmas, all of this is yours." And the little boy bursts into tears and he says, why are you crying? And he says, "Because I'm going to lose these toys. I'm going to break some of them. I'm going to be really disappointed." Then he goes, well, that kid's really pessimistic. Okay? So he takes the other little boy out to the outhouse, swings open the door full of stinky horse manure, and the little boy jumps up and down. He says, "Oh, goody." And he says, "Why are you so happy?" He says, "Well, with all this manure, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere."
Yeah. Sweet
So,
boy.
sweet boy, right?
Yeah, sweet boy.
Sweet boy.
We love him.
We love him. But you know what's crazy is I've watched, at this point in my life now, I've watched people live both ways. And I can tell you that the little boy that is the one who said, "Oh, goody, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere," is way happier and enjoys life a lot more.
Yeah.
So there's something very powerful to that. And it's even funny because I remember working with this one doctor who is an amazing woman, and she almost comes across as like, kind of like not someone that you would, she's not a skeptic at all, right? Not a skeptic at all. And so the people, and I took her to Harvard Business School, and I had this class that I was basically leading this whole process at Harvard for doctors that wanted to get more education in business. So we called it the Executive Management Program for Physicians, and I made it with my professors at Harvard Business School. And it was really cool. It was awesome. And all the other guys that were in the class that were the more skeptics, that were sort of like they'd had some business training and everything, they all would like kind of cap on her for being too optimistic, for being too much like believing and naive and everything, right? But the funny thing is she ended up becoming the most wealthy woman and most wealthy of everybody in that entire cohort of class because of that approach that she had to life. And people would laugh at her. They'd say, "Oh, she made such a bad decision, ha, 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 ha." And then she would always invest in the things that everyone was running away from. And they would invest in all the stuff that everyone else was running towards. And they'd never make money. And she always got richer and richer and richer. So how much of it is just her attitude, first of all? I do find that what you're saying has real deep resonance for me on the concept of knowing when to have this concept of discernment, right? Because to me, when I see a pattern that's repetitive in my life, that's leading to an outcome that is not the one that I really would like to experience, right? I need to wake up to that pattern. I need to be able to see that pattern in me and ask myself the question, okay, it's all God, but why did God or my higher self choose this for me? What is he or she intending for me to learn by me having this experience? And that was the biggest shift in my life, I'd say, when I went from thinking, why did this happen to me, to why did I choose this? It was the most powerful thing ever. So it doesn't mean that and that to me is what discernment truly is when you start realizing these patterns that you're experiencing are over and over and over again can be avoided if you become aware. It's the awareness of it that becomes most important. I believe we live in a mental matrix, right, that's based on mind, and mind is the cross between heart and brain. It's not only one, right? It's both emotion, feminine and masculine. Everything is broken in masculine and feminine principle. And so what I believe is that we are here in this experience like a spiritual life simulation. And this spiritual life simulation game of sorts teaches us through opposites. So in order for me to learn what pleasure is, I have to experience pain. In order for me to learn what unconditional love is, I'm going to experience its opposite over and over and over again. What's the opposite of unconditional love? Betrayal. You don't feel like, conditional love. You don't feel betrayed by someone you never cared for. You feel betrayed by someone you truly cared for, right? When they hurt you or they did something bad to you, right? But when you step back and say, well, wait a minute, maybe it's not until I can learn to fully accept conditional love and fully accept betrayal that I can finally, once I learn to accept that, I can finally understand what unconditional love truly is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's through the opposites that we have to learn. But that doesn't mean we just sit back and keep experiencing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, because that's just the definition of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do is we need to identify those patterns. Be really good at identifying the patterns of your life, for everything you're experiencing in your outer world are the things that need to yet be healed,
Mm-hmm.
right? The aspects of you that you said, I'm not that, so then it gets pushed into your outer world. It's not really a separate world from you. Your outer world is just your you inverse. We think that we are inside the universe, but actually the universe is inside of us.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's a projection of everything that's around us. So everything that I judged in myself negatively shows up in my outer world.
Mm-hmm.
So that can become a pretty dystopian place until I finally realize, oh, I need to accept this thing and reintegrate it back and realize I am that I am. I think that's why the name of God is I am that.
Mm-hmm.
I am. It's not I am not that. It's I am that I am. So this concept of being able to look and say, okay, these are the patterns that are happening to me. I keep experiencing the same things over and over again. Good discernment is being able to recognize the patterns and how those patterns are impacting you. And then finally saying, you know what? I've transcended this. We don't escape planet Earth because it's not an escape room, right? Some people like to believe it's an escape room. I don't believe it's an escape room at all. I think the only way that we're going to be able to move on beyond this plane of experience is by falling in love with this experience just the way that it is. Mm-hmm. And that's tantamount to us falling in love with ourselves. Because we will continue to attract everything we judge until we no longer judge everything we attracted.
Yes. Yeah. Beautifully said. Yes. I love that perspective on discernment. I mean, it's all about like objectively tracking your energy, objectively being able to see what patterns are arriving in your life over and over and over and accept and embrace. And then from there, the gift is shared, as we know from our friend, Richard Rudd.
Oh, Richard, our mutual friend. Yeah.
Yes.
Love him.
Okay. I have just to be honest, I have 1,000 questions that are popping in my head. And I'm like, there's so many. Well, one of them, okay. So one thing I just want to say for anyone that's not, I already said this, but I'm going to say it again. For anyone who's not familiar with Robert, you've created so much and you're going and discovering pyramids and you are tracking all the sacred geometry and sigils that are inside of the most timeless, heroic pieces of art. And you're tracking all of the different similarities between Egypt and Greece and Osiris and Dionysus. You just know so much. And I'm curious, again, speaking of the particular energy that runs through your body and the way that you've been able to direct it, you've been able to direct your energy very beautifully from what I've seen. And I'm curious how your relationship to manifestation has come to be, because I know that with everything that you speak about, the power of being able to make anything in your fucking life happen that you want to make happen. And you are living proof of creating so much. So many things have come to be because of your desires and your brain and just making it manifest. So for people who feel they have so much energy in their body, but they feel really locked down in their capacity to actually declare it and to move fucking forward. What would you say, using all of the great, brilliant tools that you have with how energy works, to finally fucking be able to turn themselves inside out and make all that stuff happening inside their bodies outside manifest?
Wow. It's definitely a profound question that deserves, I think, a profound answer. Mm-hmm. I believe that we can experience everything in this world that we desire. This world is already a heaven or a hell. It's based on this radio track that I basically just said earlier, which is what is going to be your radio reception. You can think of our brains. Our brains aren't hard drive storage units, first of all. So the learning process, I think, needs to be revamped for kids and for everybody.
Yeah.
Because first of all, we are taught to separate every subject into totally disparate ways of learning it. Right. So, for example, we're taught that chemistry is entirely different, has nothing to do with mathematics, and that it has nothing to do with sociology and nothing to do with psychology and all of these things. But actually, I could say that philosophy in its applied form is mathematics.
Mm.
Applied mathematics is geometry. Applied geometry is physics. And applied physics is chemistry. And applied chemistry is biology. And applied biology is psychology. And applied psychology is sociology. And applied sociology is back to philosophy. Everything's a circle. And they're not separate at all. In fact, I could show you that every single one of them are connected through number and form and math and music. It's all connected. And we're just looking at it and perceiving them through different sensory experiences. So nothing is really separate. It's just an illusion of separation that we create and experience. And that's true in the educational format as well. So I think one of the things that we need to be able to do is realize that our brain is not a hard drive storage unit. It's not a place for us to cram information into to just memorize. What it is it's a radio receiver with a processor. And that radio receiver has a tuning dial that's your heart. And as you are able to tap into the frequencies that are in the field around you, all the knowledge you could ever want and have access to is all in this Akashic field all around you. And you can tune into that radio and capture information you've never even learned before. And this is what people refer to as downloading. And it's part of the process of going into higher dimensional experience, realizing that the things that we thought we learned as facts are not really facts at all. They're merely facets. And we're looking at one aspect of a prism rather than looking at the complete prism. And the only way for me to be able to understand the complete prism is to have enough non-judgment of that outer world so that I can tune in with high frequency into those higher frequencies and bands of information.
Because you can't even access it if there's like all this judgment. It's like a filter.
That's right. You have to start realizing the oneness of all, and then also realize that it's your judgment that holds you back, and that the only thing that's real in this universe, or U-inverse, is what you persistently believe. So the only real obstacles in life are the imaginary ones. The ones that you give as your self-narratives. Those self-narratives can often be negative. And you tell yourself, I can't do something. And a lot of people want to go into like, oh, it's so-and-so that did this to me, or they held me back from this, or it's because of my parents that, or it's because of, the 13 bloodlines. The 13 bloodline families are basically coming to get me, and it's the Rothschilds, and they did this, and because they changed music from 440 hertz to 432. I don't believe any of that.
I don't know what any of that means, but it's great.
It's all you.
Yes.
It's all you. So the only obstacles that are real are the ones that you cling to and believe in. And that makes it real. So in quantum physics, there's this concept that we refer to as Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, right? Heisenberg's uncertainty principle basically says that, and I'm just going to paraphrase this, whatever you believe is what you're going to get. So if you have a strong bias that leads you to see things only one way, one facet, not a fact, then that will limit your perception in so many other areas as well. You'll see a picture, but you'll miss all the little details inside that picture. And the more you're able to open up your consciousness and balance your brain, think of your brain as this radio receiver that has an antenna. And the way that you get your antenna working well, I remember when I was a kid, I used to, we didn't have even before cable, right? I'd have to hold on to the antenna just a certain way on the TV to make it work. And as soon as I'd let it go, it wouldn't work anymore because I was actually becoming part of that antenna. Right? I'm actually, working as part of the antenna when I'm holding the antenna. Our brains are kind of similar in a way. They need to be balanced like a muscle. Imagine if you're an athlete and you only work out one arm. How balanced will you be as an athlete?
Not very.
Not very. You cannot only do if you only work out your upper body and then you try to run, and be part of a decathlon, it's not going to work. You have to be able to be balanced. The true athlete is able to be balanced. And then the best athletes also know that it's a mental game. For many, many years, human beings were stuck not being able to run the mile faster than in less than 4 minutes. It was like a mental barrier. And then one day, someone broke through that barrier. And now everybody, even high school kids, have been recorded to run faster than a 4-minute mile. How does that happen? How does a lab rat who is stuck in a maze in China figure out how to finally break through the maze, and then the exact same maze with the next rat in the United States, 7,000 miles away, is able to break through the same maze? There's something to collective consciousness. And I've seen this with patents. I'm an inventor. I've invented things that literally people I never met and never talked to, never had any contact with whatsoever, came up with the same exact ideas that I did 6,000 miles away from me in Russia. How? Because they were tapping into a radio. It was a signal that they were basically tapping into. So all knowledge, and therefore all manifestation also, is tied to those signals. And it's totally dependent on us being able to manage and control our emotional state. That's how you're able to multiply your efforts to be able to manifest effortlessly.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you. I'm tracking.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was a really beautiful answer. So as we continue forward, there's a particular topic that I'm really excited to get into.
Okay.
But
yeah, I wonder what that might be.
Yeah. I know, surprise. But before we go into that, just for a little bit of context for people listening to this, what is polymath? Because you're already infusing a lot of that in this, and I just want to make that kind of a clear definition.
So there's a couple ways I'm going to go. I'm going to give you the strict definition of it. Poly just means many. Math, you might think, means mathematics, and it does. But mathematics in an etymological sense. So where did the word get derived from? During Plato's time. So there was Socrates and there was Plato, who was his understudy, right, and mentee. And then his mentee was Aristotle, which you've probably heard of as well. So it wasn't until Aristotle that the term mathematics was limited to having a meaning that was associated directly with the study of quantity. So the science of quantity. So how to quantify things. Until that time, it was the study of all learning. Now, why is that? Why is it that Plato and Pythagoras would say that all is number and that all learning is tied to number? Because it is the language of the universe. Yeah. So from looking at that fern behind you or those leaves on the trees, even though they might not even be real, they're still going to be following generally this pattern of the Fibonacci pattern. It's based on number. You could look at branches on a tree. You would start going up the tree and you'll see one branch. Then there'll be another branch. You go around the tree, then there's going to be 2 branches. Then there'll be 3 branches. Then there's going to be 5 branches as you go higher and higher up the tree. This is following the Fibonacci pattern because it just goes 1 plus 1 equals 2, 1 plus 2 equals 3, 2 plus 3 equals 5, 5 plus 3 equals 8, then it's going to be 13 branches because 8 plus 5 equals 13. And then the next number of branches will be 21 branches. Did you know this? Every single thing that exists is complying with this strange golden ratio proportion that is literally the foundational basis of all. So it's biology, it's chemistry, it's mathematics, of course, but it's also philosophy. It's everything. And when you start to realize all of this is connected, what polymathy allows you to do is to recognize you're just a mini learner. And the mini learner means that you start to achieve a degree of expertise in multiple fields. So you now start connecting the dots and saying, wait, math and music aren't separate at all. In fact, the center for learning for mathematics in my brain is my left temporal lobe. But the center for learning for music is my right temporal lobe. Does that mean that math is just the abstract form of music? And it is. It's exactly what it is. So if you study music and you understand music theory, then you'll understand that all of it is mathematics. Every musical note that exists is based on something we call musical interval, which is all, starts with the square root of 2 is where we split an octave in half, right? It's the middle point of the octave. It gives you the diminished fifth. Then from there, you get the what's called the perfect fifth and the perfect fourth, and then the major third and the minor sixth. These are all mathematical ratios. The perfect fifth is 3/2. The perfect fourth is 4/3. Then the next one is 8/5 for the minor the minor third, right? So as you start to look at, that's the minor sixth, and the major third is 5/4. So these are all mathematical ratios. And it's based on this idea of no different than I cannot understand and experience pleasure until I understand and have a reference point on pain. So that's what this is basically doing. These ratios of intervals of all of our experience that create all separation of light in all its colors and all music in all of its different notes and gradations, they're all giving us reference points to compare against something else. Mm-hmm. This is how we experience our world. So when you start realizing this and you go, okay, so wait, if the front part of my brain, my right temporal lobe is music and the left temporal lobe is mathematics, then where's geometry? Well, it's right in the center of the brain. That's why people love geometry when they're going through a spiritual awakening path, because it's right next to the pineal and pituitary gland. Right? And language is there as well. So as soon as you start getting into geometry, you realize, wait, so music is just the geometry that we experience with our ears. And that means that geometry is just the music we experience with our eyes. See how it's all connected? Mm-hmm. And then you start realizing, but wait, aren't all of the elements on the periodic table of elements in chemistry also just geometric forms? Yeah, they are. They're all based on the Platonic solids. So they're absolutely geometric forms, and how they all come together is all based on geometry. So then, does that then mean that chemistry itself is music?
Wow. Whew. Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. I can see how this is addicting.
And how the building blocks of that chemistry is what we call physics, which is all based on geometry. Mm-hmm. So who made all of this?
Yeah.
This is so beautiful. And then you realize, I made it all. I'm God. The reason why I say I'm God is we all are. No one of us is not. God is in everything. It's not, for us to say, it's very easy for us to say, gosh, the world around me, I go into nature and I can see this is God, right? Like you go to somewhere like Zion National Forest or somewhere in Utah, and it's like, wow, so majestic, so incredible. It's easy to say, or Grand Canyon, this is God. But when we want to apply it to ourselves, all of a sudden we jump back into our ego and we say, I can't possibly be God. I make tons of mistakes. I do lots of stuff wrong. I'm a wretch. But the truth is, and we often say, well, geez, that guy's on an ego trip. He thinks he's God. Well, if you think the rest of the world is God and you're the only thing that's not, that's an ego trip. Mm-hmm. That's what we're experiencing. We're experiencing our own ego trip until we remember who we are, that we're all divisions of that one source creator, every one of us. And why did God separate himself into all of us, or herself into all of us? Because there's no gender for this God. Because just like Alan Watts says, an eye cannot see itself without the aid of a mirror. If an eye were to look at itself, it would only see the outer world, right? Unless it is confronted with a mirror. So the only way that consciousness can perceive itself, like an eye, is to make mirrors of itself and divide itself into many. And that's what we all are. We're all divisions of that one. We provide mirrors to each other so that God, source creator, can perceive itself through our unique eyes, which then you start to realize, whoa, this is so beautiful. And I exist simply for the unique perception that I'm experiencing, that nobody else has ever experienced and no one else will ever experience. I'm feeding information into this gigantic expansion of consciousness so that God himself or herself can become more wise and know itself better and fall in love with itself even more.
Yeah. Wow. It's cool listening to you too with like this geometry that's behind you.
I know. I was thinking the
Yeah.
same thing. I was like, wow, this is like
I know, it's
definitely
kind of
making my point. This is a form of flower of life right here.
yeah, it's perfect. I love the
Hmm.
flower of life. One of the entry points for me to this that I really resonate with has been I had this huge love for yantras that came into my life probably a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And it was the first time I was ever told, like, see this shape? This shape is the goddess. See this shape? This shape is the goddess. See this shape? This has Saraswati in it. This has Kali in it. This has Radha in it. And be like, wait. I don't understand. Like, what do you mean this shape is that? Like,
Yeah.
and my mind was blown, but I also was so mesmerized. And my teacher, Dawn Cartwright at the time, I've continued to work with for many years, she's such a tantrika through and through. And I remember her pulling up the yantras and teaching us like what the yantras were. And she would look at the yantras and she'd just be like, like she just like would like stare into the yantra and like put it up and just like fall in love. And like I would feel her transmission of like, she's just like, oh, the goddess. It's just this shape. And I was like, this is so interesting. And she was like, they say, in the Hindu tradition that you could gaze into a yantra for, however long that you choose, 5 minutes, an hour, a day, a week, just staring into it and receive all the codes that you could possibly need. Just looking into a picture, or she would put a picture of Krishna and Radha up and we would all just stare into it. And like that was our practice for a long period of time, is just look at this image. Don't study the material as much. Don't do this. Just gaze into this image as a daily practice, or find one you want to gaze into. So you could choose one with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene that feels very inspiring and just gaze into it. So that's one thing I wanted to say about my entry point to this and being like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for a while. And then also, I'm not going to go fully into this because I won't do it justice. But one thing that I have been taught very briefly by Josh from the Emerald podcast, who I shared that couple episodes with you. I was in his year-long, and one of the things he goes through is the directions, like the 4 directions, and he made a lot of distinction between all the 4s, all the different 4s and symmetry in our body, directions of our body, and then 4/4 time in music, our heartbeat, and like just started connecting the elements with the music, with our bodies. And it was like a 90-minute presentation of all the ways that the 4 directions / 4/4 time in music is everywhere. So much so that I don't remember all of it, but I want to go back and research that, because I remember listening to that being like, whoa, like the code of 4 is written in everything.
It really is. It's all over the wall right there, too.
Yeah. It's everywhere. And I know, okay, so, oh man, there's just so many things. Yeah. You don't believe in coincidences. So this is something that I have had that has kind of combated some of this. Not particularly, I won't say all of it, because sometimes I very much feel like, wow, yeah, that was very in your face of something that is meant to be seen and happens. But also, I do have a brain that sometimes is like, okay, but the tree, that's just how trees look, like the 1 and then the 2 and then, like very easily I'm just like, but that's like the skeptic in me.
Yep.
And that's just been a part of me that I've like, and like I have so much around magic. Like there's just such a deep love for magic. And it's hard sometimes when the magician in me is combating the skeptic in me, when and I think it also holds me back from really seeing all of the energy that's actually possible to see, like dropping the veil.
Yeah.
And I hear stories of people all the time that have these crazy experiences where energies are in a room and like they feel spirits. And I've had a few of those, but yeah, I actually want more. Like I want a lot more of being able to feel presences and things and see, not that I'm necessarily calling in chaos, but the skeptic in me, I think sometimes
How do you see
clasps.
more?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to what you first were talking about the yantras for a moment. And people, I have art books. I published 4 books of my artwork. And these books, people often are like, but wait, you need to have a full explanation in here because a lot of it has like detailed diagrams and like super complex geometric forms. And then lots of numbers are written on the sides of it and everything. And I don't do that
Mm.
because I don't want to limit what someone perceives in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we also very often get stuck to think, okay, well, this is what I'm told that this is, and it cannot be anything but this.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to limit that for anybody. So I just say, just take it in. It's like a coffee table book. And they're called the Mirror of Consciousness series, right? There's 4 volumes of it. And I have more than 10,000 drawings where I never used in the, first 10 years of my spiritual awakening, I never used any psychedelics at all. At all. I did it all through geometry. Everything was all based on geometry. And that's the ancient method. You can create DMT in your own brain by drawing geometry. And why is that? Because geometry is the QR code for the subconscious mind. It's literally a QR code. So just as you said in your practice with Dawn, I think that was the name of your teacher, you would stare at these yantras and just take them in for a long time. You're just letting it absorb into you through your subconscious to activate something. It's upgrading you and you don't even realize it necessarily. So when we start putting, and that's why probably someone at a subconscious level put these tiles on the walls here because they're already doing something to you at the subtle level just by even noticing that they're there. Even if you don't notice that they're doing something to you. If you haven't noticed these days, now platonic solid lighting has become very popular. Like you go into major restaurants or bars, they've all got geometric form shapes. Have you noticed this now?
Yes.
That's a reflection of what's happening with our consciousness. All of a sudden, geometry is popular. It's in, right? It's like super cool, right? But it's been around forever, right? There's never been a time that it wasn't around. It's because we're evolving that now these things and these images are starting to show up in our outer world, right? And each one has different meaning. The icosahedron is water, for example, and it has this very feminine feel to it. It's beautiful. The dodecahedron is ether and spirit. So as you start realizing it's through the symbols and the symbologies of all of this geometric form that can show up in the form of yantras or in mudras, right? I know you've studied gene keys, and so gene keys has mudras associated with each thing, right? We don't even realize that the things we're doing and putting our body shapes are actually geometric forms that are meant to bring us into a frequency. When we learn to pray, for example, even the Catholic Church, right? They have this thing where you go in, do this, Lord be with you, also with you thing, and you get down on your knees. And when we form, get down on our knees, straighten our body up and have our body straight and our knees are on the floor and then go straight back, we're actually making a 3-4-5 triangle with our body. So you have your head here, your body comes down, the knees are here, your feet come here. The proportion of this is a 3-4-5 triangle, which is this divine triangle. It's the proportion that the second pyramid in Giza is built off of. It's a 53-degree angle right here from where the base of your feet would come all the way up to your head. We don't even realize that we're just making these geometric forms, just like when we do mudras, right? Whatever they are, all of these different ones that we learn, those are all geometries that are bringing resonance.
What's the devotion mudra?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay, I'll look it up later.
Do you remember it?
No.
I can't remember. I think it's, anyway, I think it's one of these.
Yeah.
This, yes. And I've been trying to memorize these because I think they're really cool. And in my practice of learning gene keys as well, I've been really wanted to get into this. And when I went to the London live event with Richard Rudd, he invited me. It was amazing. He had this beautiful Om chant right at the end. And I was like, wow, I was getting downloads the entire time. And he was talking about the Merkaba, which is the new pearl, right, aspect of gene keys, which is the star pearl. And it is in the shape of Metatron's cube. And he was talking about it. And I was like, wait a minute, this is about throat chakra. And that's exactly what we're seeing on Giza Plateau. There's a new chamber. That's a throat chakra chamber that's now, it's been hidden, but now coming to light. Everything in your outer world is just a representation of what's happening inside of you. So you start realizing, okay, if I'm going into the throat chakra now, that's the fifth dimensional experience. My world and the outer world is going to change to be reflective of that fifth dimensional experience. It's also associated with the Hierophant card and elephants. So I'm going to start seeing elephants everywhere.
That's right.
That's
yes,
right.
you are.
Exactly. So I'm going to start seeing elephants, and sure enough, I'm seeing elephants everywhere. So this is not what you think it is. We are in a dream. And the dream is directly no different than if you were in a dream and you went to a lucid dream. A lucid dream and a regular dream is when you realize that you're in a dream.
Right.
So the moment you realize you're in a dream, you can actually control the dream.
Yeah.
Right? You can actually start to figure out, wait, I'm in a dream. Oh, let me see what I can do now that I realize I'm in a dream. And until that moment I've realized I'm in a dream, I'm asleep. You see what I mean? In a metaphorical sense, that's what the awakening is. When you finally awaken to the fact that you are in your own dream, that's when you also realize, okay, just like in my dreams, I'm the main character in my dream. Okay, so you're the main character in your dream. But all the other people in my dream, who are they? Who makes them? The people. So if you show up in my dream, and I have a dream with Madelyn Moon in it, who is Madelyn Moon in my dream? It's a figment of my own subconscious mind. So you're no different than me. In fact, you are me, and I am you. This is what oneness actually is. When you realize that you're in the illusion of separation. We started out, the universe was in us because we're in the dream. But we get so far into the dream that we think that everything is real. When everything is fake, you don't have a reference anymore on what's real. You've lost the context of the musical intervals to be able to say, how long is 5 if I don't know how long 4 is?
Right.
If I don't have a reference point, a measurement, and by the same token, if I don't have a reference point to say to me that this is fake and this is real, then I'm always grasping, and then everything becomes real to me. It doesn't make it real, though. It's just we've left the references out on purpose so that we can experience this life and have an awakening and then go into the next stage. And the next stage is called the divine Leela. Leela is what the play, right? This is what Hindus believe, that you finally get to the stage, you realize you're waking up from the Maya. You're still in the dream, but now you can actually play in this dream.
And Maya is like the
illusion.
The illusion, yes.
It's the dream. It's the dream itself. So, even Maya backwards, you could say is I am. Right? Many languages, Ya is I. Maya backwards, Ya, right? Am, Ya am, I am. When we finally realize we're in this dream, then we can start to play with it, manifest effortlessly. We can realize that when things happen to us that are not so great, we can also realize, why did I still choose this? It doesn't mean that you're completely out of the old way of things being. It's still there, all the duality, all the difficulty, but you start realizing that judgment is the source of suffering. Judgment of separation is a source of suffering, but suffering is actually the source of enlightenment. It's actually why we come here. We come here so that we can learn through suffering, to learn to transmute it, and that becomes the true philosopher's stone. When you can look at any circumstance that happens to you and experience bliss.
Alchemize. Fucking alchemize that shit.
Exactly. And this is where I think it actually rolls beautifully into sexuality.
Great. Yes. Tell me about the pituitary and the pineal.
Okay.
Give us the juice. I want to know about sex alchemy.
Okay.
The Robert way.
Okay, the Robert way. So basically, we have these energetic centers in our body. We think we only have 7. I didn't even know we had 7 until like 15 years ago, first time I really started hearing about it. And now you realize that as you go along this path, you start realizing it's not just 7 anymore. You've got 24. There's 12. So think of the 7 as like the white keys on a piano keyboard, starting from like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So come back up again to A. So each one is a note, and they have colors associated with that too, starting from red, going all the way up to purple and, sort of violet colors. So when you go through this whole process, The energetic centers of the first 4 of these centers are the masculine. The next 3 of these centers, but actually the 4th as well, like going the opposite direction, are the feminine centers. So as you move your energy up your spine, and you can push this cerebrospinal fluid up your spine into each one of these chakra points. And as they go up to each one of your chakra points, it's going to light up the semitones as well. So these are whole tones. Now we've got semitones. So now you've got a chromatic scale, 12 going up and 12 coming down, 12 masculine, 12 feminine, 24. 24 is the number of divine. Right, why? Why 24 is so special? Well, 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 equals 24, right? 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 equals 24. Yeah. 4 times 3 is 12, times 2 equals 24, times 1 is still 24. And 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 equals 10. 10, exactly. So now it's made a new type of triangle. That triangle is a 10, 24, 26 triangle.
Oh.
So why is that so important? Well, because that is the only triangle proportion. You could reduce it down to its Pythagorean triple, which is a 5, 12, 13 triangle. It's the only triangle that's very special.
It's amazing.
It's the only triangle that has the same perimeter value as its area, making it a portal. So when you match the triangle to its area and its perimeter value, you've got something magical, right? So now you're talking about sigil type stuff. If you look on the back of a $1 bill, some of the ancients and some of the founding fathers, they knew this stuff because the exact pyramid that's on the back of the dollar bill is that proportion, a 5, 12, 13 proportion.
Wow.
Gives you a 67.38 degree angle. And this is also referred to as the philosopher's stone knowledge. The shape of this is matching the proportions generally of a pineal gland.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So everything in the outer world is just a reflection of what's in your inner world. So we have 2 eyes. Our right eye connects to our left brain, back to the occipital lobe, right? So that's where vision goes through. And then the left eye connects to the right brain. Where the 2 cross over, they make an X shape. The X shape happens, the center of that X is right at the pituitary gland. That's the feminine. So the masculine is the pineal gland. The feminine is the pituitary gland, right? So now often we hear about, wait, I've got 7 chakras. Okay, I can understand this part of it. So I've got my root, I've got my sacral, I got my solar plexus, I've got my heart chakra, then I've got my throat chakra. The throat becomes the bridge between the heart-brain consciousness, right? Because it's connecting. This is connecting this to this, right? And both must be in balance. That's the masculine and feminine in balance. And then, so then I go to the 6th chakra, and that should be the Ajna chakra, right? So the third eye. And we often associate that with the pineal gland, right? But the pituitary gland actually sits, if you look at the anatomy of a brain, the pituitary gland sits beneath the pineal gland. So inside the brain, if this is your head from the side, your pituitary gland is here, your pineal gland is here. But did you know that when you breathe, your brain contracts and expands just like your heart does? If you looked at like a CNA fluoroscopy or a CAT scan, like real-time imagery or MRI, you would see your brain expanding and contracting just like this with each breath that you take, right? And your heartbeat as well.
Wow.
It does.
That's beautiful.
So when you take in a deep breath and then take it in again and then hold it and then intentionally picture your pituitary gland, the rise of the feminine. We're talking about the rise of the feminine right now. The outer world expression of the rise of the feminine is the inner world expression that I'm talking about, with the pituitary gland meeting the pineal gland on the same plane with that breath. So you suck in the breath, you make them touch. This is exactly what Michelangelo was trying to depict in the Sistine Chapel, where he shows Adam reaching out to touch the finger of God, right? It's these 2, when they meet and they make love inside your own brain, and you can perform this during the sex act as well, it creates an electrical canopy that starts to now envision for you a black cube, like the Kaaba. It's symbolized that we see in Mecca, right? Where they go around this black cube, around and around, right? And they go around 7 times around the black cube, each one for each of the chakras as well. So all this symbology is embedded in our esoteric knowledge. Just people have lost the meaning behind it. We don't understand why it necessarily is. Just like often we don't understand why we need to experience suffering. If we did, then it wouldn't really be suffering, would it? If we understood the purpose for suffering, just like if we understood why we need to learn mathematics, I want to balance my brain so that I could become a clear receptacle, so I can become a clear antenna. The best way for me to balance my brain is I have to learn polymathy. I have to be good in each of the areas. I can't just work out one part of my brain. If I'm only a mathematician, I can miss out on the rest of the world. If I'm only a musician, I can miss out on the rest of that world as well. If I'm only a scientist who's doing biology or something, I'm limiting my perception in the world. And then I become the hammer that seeks out the nail of confirmation bias. So you have to break down and unlearn what you've learned and find balance. That's the point of this. So as we perform this and get the pituitary gland and the pineal gland to touch, then you will start seeing a black cube inside your brain with your third eye. You start spinning that black cube. The black cube will go and become translucent. And inside of it, you will see a crystal Merkaba, right? Which is the same as, Metatron's cube. Think of it like that. As you see that crystallized Merkaba, you can go inside of it. You and your partner both can go inside of it. And it's like an elevator, and it takes you to like a mythical world that seems more real than this one. And like Shambhala. And it's incredibly beautiful. It's an amazing experience. And then you realize, wait a minute, this is the real world. And what I've been living has been the illusion.
Wow. That's a step up from how we think of sex magic as just think about your desire at the peak of orgasm. I really like this. I mean, also that's great too. Think about what you want at the peak of orgasm, but I love how much involvement of the body and the breath that this requires.
And it requires a synchronization. And it's like, you've seen the movie Avatar, right? So you know how they connect the tail to the animal that they're riding or something, right? And they have this special connection. That was a metaphor for what I'm talking about. When you are in this act of union with a partner, they will see exactly what you see. It's like, those movies.
Yeah, totally.
It's like in those movies where you can connect to the eagle or the hawk or something, and then all of a sudden you can see what the hawk, your remote view, what the hawk is seeing.
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. So when you're in real divine partnership, and all of this is described through the alchemical process, and there are 5 steps of the alchemical process. So it starts with the nigredo. Nigredo is the blackening, and it's a reference to you becoming acquainted with your shadow self. This starts to appear in your outer world in the form of an animus. If you're a woman, you'll have an animus, which will be a masculine or masculinized counterpart, right? That represents, if you're a woman and who's in a lesbian union, it could just be an aspect of a feminine who's in the more masculine side of your relationship, right? Everyone has both masculine and feminine energy. It's not necessarily tied to gender. I could say that I'm probably 60% masculine and 40% feminine. And that's probably a good balance for me to be a man. For a woman, it might be, 60-40. It could be 55, 45. It's depending on where you are and then finding that balance that is right for you, right? So all of this is about achieving this balance. And so when you get through this process with another partner, the partner is representing your unresolved, disintegrated aspects that you would have thought you'd never be attracted to before. Now all of a sudden you are. And that becomes this powerful union. You're magnetically drawn to this person who's going to be your partner in this process, because they're literally a projection of your own inner self that's coming in the outer world and comes into your world. Then you go into albedo, which is the whitening represented by the swan. So the negredo is represented by crows. Then you go into the peacock, which is the bird of many eyes. So look at all of its feathers, its eyes of perception opening up. You're going through this process together. You might have been doing it separately, but in order to converge. And then the next stage is called the rubedo, which is the marriage of the red king and the white queen. And you literally are acting out this metaphorical, mythological game with your partner. And then it ends up in the phoenix stage, which is also when the kundalini fully rises and it is permanently risen. And this is where you get to through the act of sex alchemy. And then manifestation changes your entire perception, your entire worldview, everything shifts. Nothing is the same after you do this. It's kind of like before this and after this in your life. It's like when I take people to Egypt, they say, oh my gosh, I had like a before Egypt and after Egypt reckoning of time in my life.
Yeah.
That's what this is like.
Wow. That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything about, I didn't know where we were going to go today, but this is so beautiful in terms of manifestation. Like you coming and explaining how to manifest in such a way that you're connecting all parts of life, allowing all parts of yourself, seeing everybody as you, being with God, like all of it. You're amazing. Thank you, Robert, so much for coming here.
What a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, it's so sweet. So just as we wrap up, where can people connect with you, and what do you want them to know about what you're doing right now? What is the dopest thing you're doing?
Well, you know what? I think the best way, if you're interested in this type of work, follow my work on Codex. So I have a television show on Gaia called Codex. It's getting really, really cool.
Yeah.
And super exciting. And the game is really ramped up a lot. And the second season just came out, so you could binge watch it or whatever. And that's what a lot of people do. Tends to be that people, when they get into it, they like really get into it. And it's a real life Indiana Jones adventure of consciousness. And it's the most fun thing I've ever, I think, been a part of. And you can also find my books, and you can find me on my website. My website is robertedwardgrant.com. You can follow me on Instagram. And I've literally tracked, you can go back from the very first post I did in 2019. This has just been a chronological tracking of my awakening. And you can literally see how I saw things and how I've evolved and changed. All of it's still there. I've never touched it or taken it down. I didn't share on Instagram so that I would get well known for this. I was sharing for myself just to create like a repository of information of my awakening journey. And I really believe that we're like living out a movie that we think is playing forwards, but is actually playing backwards. And all of this is tied to entangled future and past. The past and the present create the future, but the future also creates the past. And how we perceive it is totally up to us. So the main message I want to give to everybody is that you are the captain, and the captain of your fate and the master of your own soul. There's no one that's going to basically change life for you except yourself. And you can't change people. The only thing you can do, and you can't even change the world around you, the only thing you can do is work to change yourself. And once you work to change yourself, that's when the world around you changes.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. This was so dope. We will have all the links in the show notes. Thank you all for listening to this episode. We'd love to know what you thought. If you loved it, we'd love a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. Please come back, because the show is continuing on. I've been saying for some time that I'm not sure if I'm going to continue the show. It's going to continue on just sporadically.
Yay.
Yeah. Yay. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for being so authentic. That's the thing I love about following your work and who you are and everything, is your authenticity is an inspiration. So many people, in particular to me.
Thank you. I receive. Thank you. Likewise.